Thank you for everybody who joined. Today's topic is the BOM of all BOM webinars by GoEngineer. Just to give you a quick introduction of who we are, my name's Quinton Rocke. I'm an application engineering manager out of San Diego. We also have Jake Davis. He's based out of our Flagstaff, Arizona location and is one of our application engineer data management specialists, and I'm sure much more than that. There we go. So just a quick rundown of our agenda. We'll start out with using BOMs in SOLIDWORKS and then cover using BOMs in PDM. And we'll take a quick look at the end of SOLIDWORKS Manage and how that might expand the BOM functionality available in our products. And of course, some Q&A. So without further ado, I want to get started and jump right in. I'm just going to start with some of the basics of SOLIDWORKS BOMs. So you can see I have a drawing here, and there's different ways to do it. This is SOLIDWORKS, so you could have shortcut buttons or pull down menus or customize your command manager or whatever. But essentially, we're going to be inserting a bill of materials. So probably everybody's done this, or most people, unless you're brand new. It asks you which view do you want to tie it to. So if I already had this pre-selected, it wouldn't do that. But I'm just going to go ahead and pick the main view here. And there's a lot of different options as far as where to attach it, what type and all that. And Jake's going to jump in and cover some of that. So I'm just going to stick with the basics for now. First thing you need to do is pick a template. Out of the box, if I click this button here, this is the default location for templates if you just installed SOLIDWORKS. So this can be adjusted, and I'll show you that in just a second. But I wanted to show that there are different BOMs. These are the BOM templates here available. So you can actually pick from some different ones, and basically the difference is they just have different columns in there. Obviously this one might have the material, this one has stock size and vendor and some of those, but realistically you're probably going to need to make your own with your own columns in there. So for now I'll just use the standard one that comes out of the box, drop it in, click OK, and then place it. And it does have some snapping if you wanted to snap to the corner, or if you had attached it to an anchor, you can do that. I'll just kind of resize it a little bit here. And just to kind of talk about some quick customizing, I'll enter another column. I'll pick from custom property. The custom properties that show up here are any of the ones that are in any of the files that are in the BOM. So you'll see some of these might have like only one file has this property in there, but in this case, I know that I had a number for each one of them. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And then what I might do is, if I like this template, for next time, so I don't have to always keep adding the number column, that's where I would come in. You can pretty much right click anywhere on the BOM and you'll get a save as. What's cool about this is you can save to different formats. So you'll notice that it automatically wants to save into the template, but I could save to Excel or some other format if I wanted to do this, or copy and paste this into another system for whatever reason. But template might be standard number column, something like that, our company template. Now, where you store this stuff obviously does matter. I can put it in that default location and it'll always be there. But in this case, if I'm using like PDM, I might put it inside my PDM vault. Wherever you put it, if it's a standard location, keep in mind that you'll need to specify where that is, so that when you hit a new BOM or you want to pick from the template, you can see it on the list there. And that's going to be in your file locations under BOM templates. So again, if you want to see the default location, it's right there. But if you wanted to add some, and if you're going to customize this, just like Works templates, you probably want to customize your BOM templates and put those in a shared location that everybody can get to, whether that's in the network or if you're using PDM, I would put that in PDM, and probably cache the directory in PDM too that I put that in for each user. So that's some of the basics of the BOM. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jake here to jump in and continue on the SOLIDWORKS BOM.
So as Quinton mentioned, you can go ahead and create those custom bill of materials. There's a lot of options that you can go ahead and include. Once you've got those, you can do a whole lot more with them when you're in SOLIDWORKS. You may have different requirements for your organization or a specific assembly, and we're going to dive into a little bit of that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about customizations and formatting, and we're going to look at the bill of materials properties and dive into that a little bit deeper. And then we're going to get into some formatting tricks, like the different types of BOMs that you can have, how you number those, how you can hide or show parts from the BOM, and then promoting subassemblies. And then we're going to go into multi-sheet drawings, splitting and merging bills of materials, and linking different drawing views back to bill of materials. And then lastly, we'll jump out of the drawing and into the SOLIDWORKS assembly model and look at how to put a bill of materials directly in the model. So following what Quinton did earlier, I went ahead and made a custom bill of materials that I like to use. It's kind of short and sweet and to the point. And we're gonna use this one for today's presentation. So I've already loaded this from a favorites that I had. So you might notice right away, as soon as you hover over a bill of materials, some extra things kind of show up right away. If you don't see those, you've got these 3 arrows here, and I always just called them the BOM arrows, or the pointy things on the side of the BOM, but they're actually called the side expansion arrows. So if you click those, you can see a lot of different things going on here. As you hover over parts, you get a little preview of what those components are. And this can be kind of handy if you have a really long bill of materials and you're not sure which part is what in the list. So you can highlight those, and then if you actually click on them, it can highlight the component in your assembly. So you can see that this one turned pink, and if I pick like the label, you can see that it highlights the label in there. So this particular assembly is pretty low in parts count, but you might have some really large top level assemblies for machines or whatever you might be doing, and being able to identify those on the drawing just by hovering over them or clicking on them is pretty handy. When we're in this side expansion menu, when we click on a part and then right click on it, we get some menu options here. One of the things I mentioned we can do is excluding an item from the bill of materials. So if I was to click on this tube Z-axis and exclude it from the bill of materials, you get this warning that says, hey, this is going to be excluded. If you want to put it back, you can right click on that part in the feature manager and select include in BOM. You may also notice that when you click that part, not only does it highlight it in the drawing here, but it also does it in the feature manager tree on the side. So I'm going to go ahead and exclude that from the bill of materials and go ahead and say okay. And you can see that that moved away from it, or is no longer in the BOM. And we'll take a look later at how to restore that when we start talking about item numbering and some of those things. Additionally, you may have things like subassemblies that you may want to have all the parts listed at the top level. So maybe if they are a subassembly, but you build them when you build the top level, you may want your assembly people to be able to see all those individual components. So you can actually do what's called promote by clicking on a part and then right clicking on it and going to component options. And you get a different menu here. And you can choose, the part number field. This particular bill of materials doesn't have that, but if you did have that column called part number, you can tell it, where to get that information. And then we're going to go ahead and promote this subassembly. And then I get a warning when I do this that it's going to dissolve this when it's placed in a bill of materials. If I want to include it back in the structure as a subassembly, I can right click it on the feature manager and select restore. So again, component options, and I'm going to go ahead and say promote and okay. And you can see my bill of materials got a little bit bigger. And so now if we look at that subassembly, it's been broken out into a bunch of its components. So it's now flat in the top level bill of materials, but all the other subassemblies have remained intact. So this is kind of handy if maybe you had, in this case, this is these grease fittings. Maybe you're just going to build those on the bench and not pre-staged ahead of time. They don't require a separate drawing or anything like that. So if I want to come back to those, I can right click on my part here and then restore it in the bill of materials, and it comes back. But you might notice it's now gone to the top. Anytime we exclude, hide, or promote something in a bill of materials and then restore it back to its original state, it goes back to the top of the list. So quite a few different things that you can do just by hovering over parts and right here directly in the bill of materials itself. Now, if we do click on this BOM, we get over here in the property manager. A lot of the options that we had when Quinton was mentioning building that custom bill of materials to begin with. So you may have a lot of these set the way you want them, and you may not want to do anything with them, but certain situations may call for you to want to do a few things. So I'm just going to kind of go top down and go through a few of these just so you can kind of see some of the features that they have. I'm going to skip the this top portion here and talk about it also with numbering when we bring that one part that we excluded from the BOM back in. So I'm going to start with BOM here. Top level only. Top level only is all the components that are used to make this as if you were in that SOLIDWORKS assembly. So it may consist of smaller assemblies like these grease fittings, but they're not flattened out. So it's the individual components and the sub-assemblies that make up this top level. If I go to parts only, you can see again my bill of materials gets quite a bit bigger. And this is going to show all of the components that make up this assembly and not show them in a sub-assembly form. So like again, those grease fittings that we had, those are in a flat bill of materials, and it doesn't specifically list the sub-assembly for the grease insert. And then the last option is indented. If I click indented, my bill of materials gets really big, and you can kind of see that there's a blank under some of these numbers. So each one of these represents a sub-assembly, and then these blank item numbers underneath it are the individual components of that. So you could have all of your components for a top level assembly shown, and then visually this is a great way to be able to tell, you know, what is in a sub-assembly and what is not. Now you may notice another menu opened up when I click the indented button there, and I get some numbering options. I can do detailed numbering, which gives me my sub-assembly, and then each one of its components and subcomponents gets another tier of numbering to be able to split those out. Or I could do flat numbering, which is just all of them and it doesn't really split those off in any other way. So you have definitely some different options. In this case, we're going to go back to no numbering, and I'm going to re-highlight that and go back to the top level so it's a little bit smaller. You may notice if you click, you know, in a field in the bill of materials, you get these options here that lets you adjust things like font and alignment and things like that. You can do it by columns, you can do it by rows and individual cells. The one I want to talk about is this bill of materials, you may notice, has the headers at the bottom. You can actually change this, toggle that top to bottom. It just kind of depends on, you know, what your organizational formatting is and how you want that to look. So the next tab down is configurations. So a lot of times you may have top level assemblies or sub-assemblies that have different configurations. Maybe it's left, right, or different sizes. And this will let you show all of those in a single bill of materials. So this particular assembly just has a regular configuration and one that's flexible to allow the slide move in it. If I can click here, and you can see that it'll add another column over to the right, and I can customize this if I wanted to. So I could change this from quantity to maybe I want to call this like a dash 101 assembly. So I can name each of those columns specifically if I wanted to. And these particular configurations have the same number of components, but if they were different or had additional ones, you would see that difference in the columns there. You can also get to that by coming up to the top of the column header and selecting which configurations are shown. So if I want to uncheck that default flexible, it'll take that column away and set my bill of materials back to the way it was before. That little flyout menu moves around a lot. And then part configuration grouping, you can decide how different configurations of different parts. So maybe if this tube had different links to it and they were included in here, you could display those as separate items saying it requires one of each of those configurations or whatever that quantity is. You could take all those configurations and put them into one and just say, you know, hey, give me this, because maybe your other configurations are different positions or something like that. That's not really a different component, but it is different visually. And then you can display configurations with the same name as one item. So maybe you have configurations that or named the same, and you want those grouped together, but ones that are named different, split apart. So you can really control very detailed what you do with configurations there. I'm going to jump down to item numbers, and we have a few different options here. You can start at 1 and increment by 1, and this really just means where does your numbering start, and what do you want to increment it at? So I could tell it to start at 5, and you'll notice over here my item numbers change to start at 5, and if I want it to go every 3, it'll change that numbering that way as well. I'm going to keep these 1 and 1, just so it's a little bit less confusing. And then you also have some options to determine how some of these components are shown. So I can check or uncheck follow assembly order, and that's going to start with the very first component in my feature manager tree. So if I come over here, the very first one is this machining housing Z-axis. It starts there. Now I can reorder these items if I want, and then I can jump back and uncheck or recheck that and have them sort in those in that specific order. So, and then we have another option down here that is do not change the item numbers. So this has to do with sorting as well. If I want to move these things around, I could go and change how they're assembled, but I can also grab an item in here, expand this out, and I can grab an item and move it in different spots if I grab the right one. Yeah, it's not letting me. It's not letting me because I have follow assembly order checked. If I uncheck that, I should be able to move these guys now. Come on. So you can see by the change of the icon there, it's going to let me move that to maybe a different order. So if maybe your assembly group was used to working in a specific order and you wanted your bill of materials to define the order that the parts actually went together, you can control where these items sit in the bill of materials. So I had do not change the item numbers checked. And if I move this up to the top, you can see that that's still item number 3, but it's in a different position on my bill of materials. If I jump back over here and uncheck that, you can see that now it changes to 15 and it resorted these in numeric order. The same thing can occur if we were to take this component and exclude it again. If we restore that, like I mentioned earlier, we can re-include in the bill of materials. Where'd it go? When we restore items back, they're going to come back to the top, and that can really mess with that ordering if you have that option to not change those item numbers in place. So it can help you, and it can also make things a little confusing. It just kind of depends on how you guys want to use those. The border is pretty self-explanatory. It just kind of shows, how heavy are the lines that you've got in there, and then you can also change which layer on the drawing that the bill of materials exists on. And then the last one here is just a text format. So some organizations are very strict about having things like all caps. You can look and see this column I have as number. If I click to all caps, it'll change all those for me. So, and you can have all of these set as defaults, as Quinton mentioned, when you're saving your bill of materials. So having the first page of a drawing can often include so many notes and other information that having that bill of materials on that front page might not be the best place for it. And you might not have enough room for something like an exploded view. So having a bill of materials with an exploded view so people don't have to jump back and forth between sheets can save a lot of time. And so you can move bills of materials to different sheets on your drawing if you want to. There's a couple ways to do that. SOLIDWORKS allows you to do things in multiple ways. So you can see in our feature tree here, we've got our bill of materials listed as a separate item. If I grab this and drag it, you can see that icon change. It's not going to let me do it there. It's already there. But if I wanted to move that to sheet 2, I could let go of it there. I can also grab this corner and move it to different sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and move this to sheet 2. Now when I look at sheet 2, I've got my exploded view here and my bill of materials. Now I can add balloons to this, and if I've changed the order, the balloons aren't necessarily automatically going to match up with this bill of materials because it's a new drawing view. So to fix that, I can right click on my view, go to its properties, and right here is a section asking what do I want to do with these balloons, and I want to link these balloons to a specific table. If I had more bills of materials, I could define those. In this case, I just have the one. And I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And now if I add balloons to this exploded view, they're going to match up with the item numbers listed in this table. So if we wanted to get a little more granular, like we mentioned before, and change maybe how this bill of materials is listed, we can go ahead and change that option to something like indented with detailed numbering. And this is a pretty big bill of materials. You may have noticed I keep having to, every time I click on that indented or do something to make the bill of materials, it keeps growing and I keep having to adjust it. If we come back to this top position here, if you have an anchor built into your drawing, you can go ahead and select that and it's going to attach and stay attached to that anchor. But these define what the stationary corner is. Now, this one was left to the top left, so no matter what I add, that top left corner keeps staying the same, and so that bill of materials keeps growing downwards. If I had, let's go back to a top level, and let's say I change that to the bottom right, and then I go to indent that and put that numbering in, you can see that it grows upwards. So if we had this attached to a corner or a specific spot and we wanted to make changes to that, we can control the behavior of what that bill of materials does. So again, this is a pretty big bill of materials, and this is not a very big subassembly or assembly. And often we may need to do that. We may need to do large assemblies that have a ton of parts in them and you just can't fit it all on one sheet. And so one of the things that SOLIDWORKS allows us to do is if we click on a row here, right click where we want to take this apart, we can actually split a bill of materials and we can tell it to do it automatically, above or below, or vertically right, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So on this particular one, I'm going to say, let's split this horizontally above, and now I get another copy of that. If you notice, they both highlight. They don't become two different bills of materials, so I can't control the bill of materials properties over here independently of each other. They're still the same one, they're just being shown in different rows. And so this one's still pretty big. If we think about the example earlier, sometimes we may want to actually build some of those subcomponents at the top level. So I've actually added a third sheet here, and this is just that grease assembly. And if I look at my bill of materials here, I can see that this is what this is my grease assembly that I'm looking for here. So I'm actually going to come up here and tell this to split again below. So now I've got 3 splits going on here, and I can actually move any one of these splits to a different sheet. So if I wanted to define that grease fitting, I can move this over here to sheet 3. And now I've got a bill of materials that is short and only has these components in it. If I go up to add a balloon, like we mentioned before, you can see that that's a 1. Well, this is a different subassembly and it's a different view. In this case, this is going to be this block. So if I go back to my properties, make sure I link that to that bill of materials again, you can see that that item changes. I grabbed the wrong section of the bill of materials, but so you can actually split all these. You could have a top one drawing that contains all the subassemblies and have all of the bill of materials linked to one BOM and split across different sheets. There's a lot of different options that you can do with it. If I only wanted to show that one, but maybe collapse some of these other ones, if I click and my site expansion arrows, you can see that next to the icon for that subassembly, I actually have a little minimize button. So if I click that, that's going to shrink that subassembly, and I can pick and choose which one of these I want to show. So I don't have to show, you know, all of these indented subcomponents for other things if I don't want to. If I want to bring those tables back together, I can right click and say merge tables. And then I have a couple options here. If I say merge with next, it's going to look at the item numbers and it's going to merge it with the next one. So if I click merge next, you can see that it grabbed that other one from sheet 3 and brought it over here. And then if I say merge all, it's going to bring them all back together. So if you want to do something like split that other assembly, you may want to grab it and move it to the top of your bill of materials so that when you split that off separately, you can keep that block together. And if you merge the tables back, it's not going to pull that from your other sheet like it did. We can add components to a bill of materials by saying an insert. And let's say in this case, let's put a row above. You can see it automatically adds an item number, and I can fill in the information here. If I double click on this, I'm going to get a warning right away that says this cell is parametrically linked to a part or assembly document. So this information is being read from the parts, assemblies, and subassemblies in SOLIDWORKS. So if I edit this, it's warning me that, hey, what you're doing is not linked to the SOLIDWORKS model. So if I was to add something in here like grease or another label or something like that, it'll show up on this bill of materials, it'll have the right numbers, but if I open my SOLIDWORKS model, you're not going to see that in the feature manager tree. So it's important to make sure you understand that, because if you're adding items and maybe you forget later that you added that item, someone else opens the model, there can be some confusion generated by things being in one place but maybe not in another place. And the last thing I'm going to talk about in SOLIDWORKS itself is putting bills of materials directly into an assembly itself. So maybe your organization uses something like model-based definition where everything is done in the model and not necessarily in the drawing. So I can come up and say, you know, go to Insert, Tables, and add a bill of materials. It's also up here in my command manager. Go ahead and click that. It's going to ask me what table template I want to use, like we covered earlier, and maybe some of the behavior I want to have with this. I'm going to say OK, and then it's going to ask me, no current annotation view exists for this orientation. So the way the part is oriented and where this bill of material sits, there's not a specific view that's been created for that. So you can use something that's existing, or you could give it a new one. So in this case, we're going to give it a new annotation view. Say OK, and now I've got my my bill of materials just like on my drawing with the same formatting and everything, but it's shown in my drawing. You can see if I rotate the view around, it's definitely on a 2D plane, so it's associated with that annotation view. So if I look on my feature manager under annotations, you can see now that I have this bill of materials view, and I can do a few things with that. I can edit it, I can reorient it, activate it, etc. And maybe if I don't want it there all the time, I can go ahead and hide that view and it'll hide that bill of materials. If I show the view and then click on it, we get a lot of the same functionality that we had before. So we have our flyout. It'll highlight parts and show us previews of those parts. And then we can also decide how we want that bill of materials to behave, like something like all uppercase. So you can change the font, everything that you can do in a drawing, you can do that directly in the SOLIDWORKS model also. So in SOLIDWORKS, your bill of materials is primarily going to be based off of how you built that assembly or the components that exist in it. You can add things to that by maybe making something like a virtual component or just adding lines like we looked at earlier. In SOLIDWORKS PDM, a default bill of materials is going to be very similar to that. So if I jump over to my PDM Explorer here, and I look at my bill of materials, I was on the wrong one there. It's going to show me the components of what it calls a computed bill of materials. So this is all the components that were in that assembly in the order that they were assembled. So kind of like just like the default when you put in a drawing, that's kind of its go-to. PDM gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of the contents of a bill of material, not so much the specific formatting and those types of things. But we can control what we see in a bill of materials. In the PDM Administration Tool, there's a specific section for bills of materials, and you can create multiples. So if I open one of these, I can decide which columns exist for that bill of materials, what I want to name those columns. So maybe like revision is too long and I just want to call it rev, so I can assign aliases to those. And then I can also decide what groups or individuals those are visible to. Not to necessarily hide things, but different groups use different information. So maybe I wanted something like cost or supplier or supplier part number, and maybe that's something I wanted my purchasing group to see. So I can decide who can see those different or these different bills of materials using the users and groups permissions. And then within each one, I can say, what can they do with that bill of materials? Can they activate a computed bill of materials or even see it? Maybe you don't want manufacturing to see the bill of materials that's computed because you have another one that has additional items on it, like bench stock items or things that might not be in your CAD model. So you can control that behavior or what behavior each group or user can have access to. So in my bill of materials tab in the PDM Explorer, a lot of options. The top left one here is which one do I want to look at? So if you look back at my PDM list, I have this new bill of materials and BOM, aside from my weldment ones. And I can say, maybe I want to see the new bill of materials. If I've given the user or group access to those, then they can actually see those. So you notice as I toggle between these, there's some additional columns on the other one, and there's some different information displayed. There's another one in here with the actual little model icon on it. And this will actually grab the bill of materials that was on the SOLIDWORKS drawing. So if we look back at SOLIDWORKS drawing, this is that same bill of materials format with item number, description, quantity, very simple. So I can actually see what's on the face of the drawing. I don't have to go and open the drawing in SOLIDWORKS, open that part and preview it or do any of that. I can actually access that right here from the PDM BOM. So if I change this back, again, this is really similar to what we saw in SOLIDWORKS, indented parts only or top level only. This is going to show me all the components without their subassemblies, and the top level is going to show me just what was used to build this, this top level with its subassemblies. And then I just have a quick option here whether I want to see the tree or not, so I can see that structure. PDM does some different things with bill of materials where you can manage them outside of just what's built in SOLIDWORKS. So this particular BOM is not activated currently. I can come in and I can activate this BOM if I have those rights. And this sets the visibility in the bill of materials listing. So if I was to make this an activated bill of materials, I can see it here, but if I change my display to show bill of materials, or on the right here, I can switch my view to bill of materials. I actually have a BOM for this file. And so this is identified as an active bill of materials. And if I sort by BOMs, I can, I can show this one to different groups because maybe I've said this is exactly, what we want it to be. I can hide different, hide or show selected. So that's just going to show those top level items that I have selected there. And then I also have some options for as built or latest. If I click on latest, you might notice that things like this quantity have a blue box around them. When you see a blue box around an item in a PDM bill of materials, you can actually edit that. So if I wanted to change the quantity on this, I can change the quantity of this fitting in PDM. Now, this is not going to go and add a fitting to your SOLIDWORKS model. This is definitely very separate from that. And I can toggle with as built. If I want to save those changes, I can. And this is going to go back to what that SOLIDWORKS model represents. So if I wanted to maybe make a bill of materials that was different than my SOLIDWORKS assembly, I have a couple different options. I can modify that quantity by going to this latest option, or I can save this bill of material outside of the SOLIDWORKS model BOM, and I have a few different options here. I can save it as a CSV file or a bill of materials file like you saw before. I was speaking with Quinton earlier today, and he had a great tip, which was if you're going to do something like a CSV file, and maybe you're going to copy and paste that information into something like an ERP system or a purchasing program, when you're in your PDM administration and you're building your bill of materials, it's a good idea to put these columns in the order that matches up with whatever that application you want to copy and paste those into. Because when it creates that CSV file, it's going to create them in the same order that you create here. So for this one, we're just going to save this as a bill of materials, as a PDM bill of materials. And now you can see that all of these items are highlighted. And that means every one of these things on this bill of materials is now able to be edited. So I can change the quantities. Again, I can change this to 5 and maybe this one to 20. And they highlight yellow, and that's a good indicator that something has changed. I can also come in here and I can insert items into this bill of material. So if I wanted to add an item in here, I can say what I want this to be. So maybe grease. And I can give it information specific to the bill of materials. Yeah, maybe there's one of those. So if I save this now the bill of materials that I'm looking at, back up to my top left here, I've got the BOM that I created, and I have the two that are created in the PDM Administrative View, and then I also have the one that's directly from SOLIDWORKS drawing. Now I could take this one and save it and add items to it so it's simplified just like my drawing one is, or any of these other views that I have. So another feature that we can use is we can see different versions of bill of materials. So this one's created separately, but if I look at the PDM generated ones, these versions follow the entire history of that assembly. So I don't think I really have many changes in here, but if I make this as built and I look at the different versions, if something were to have changed between all these different PDM versions, I would be able to look at the list and be able to see those. And alternatively, I can do what's called a compare. So if I look here, I have a compare bill of materials button. And whichever bill of materials is my primary view, when I go to compare that, is going to go to my left side here. And then I have options on my right side. What do I want to compare it to? So if I choose that one I saved, you can see these orange lines here, and then this red, this indicates this was changed, and then this indicates that it exists on one but not on another. So this is a really handy tool if you're working with multiple bills of materials, how to tell the difference between those. A lot of different functions that you can do in PDM. One other one here is just to open this directly as a CSV file. So rather than just saving it, you can go ahead and open that directly. If you have a really long bill of materials, you can actually search for items in the BOM as well. And in PDM from any item, and you can do this just about anywhere, you can browse to it, you can look at its file properties and change its state in your workflow if you need to. There's a lot more we can talk about for SOLIDWORKS and PDM. We're pretty tight on time today, so hopefully that gave you some good tricks on the different things that you can do with them. Before I pass it back to Quinton, I do want to make just a quick note on Parametrics, we saw that warning earlier. It's something to keep in mind that you know, when you build SOLIDWORKS parts, assemblies, and drawings, and move those things into PDM, or even if you're just using the bill of materials on the drawing, those things are all related. As soon as we start saving bills of materials and manually manipulating those, we break that link, and SOLIDWORKS and PDM don't do things automatically for us. So it's a really powerful tool, but it's something you might want to just keep in mind if you're thinking about adopting that, how, you know, some specific management techniques to make sure that those bill of materials don't get out of your control is going to be really important. So I think I'll turn it over to Quinton now, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about SOLIDWORKS Manage.
On top of those, we start getting into what we call Manage, and this is where you start getting into, I would say, you know, PLM type functionality, and that's essentially, for those of you who don't know, SOLIDWORKS Manage is basically our desktop PLM offering. Actually, here's what we'll do. We'll start out in SOLIDWORKS, in SOLIDWORKS PDM. So I've got a similar assembly here in SOLIDWORKS PDM, and you saw all the different BOM stuff that you can do in here, and I've done some different ones than Jake there, but you get the idea. There is a SOLIDWORKS Manage tab. So SOLIDWORKS Manage is basically is the next level up from PDM, but it integrates with PDM, obviously. So we're not eliminating PDM, we're just adding on top of it. And actually a lot of what we can do in Manage takes the place of some of the things in PDM. So we end up actually simplifying PDM and doing more of the stuff in Manage. In this case, we want to focus on what we call the BOM. So the Manage record for this is going to have a similar BOM tab and properties, kind of like our data card, that stuff that you've seen before. And, you know, very simple, just like PDM. As soon as you insert it in there, if you have a BOM column set, it's going to load up here. Different terminology, but basically we create these BOMs sets. We can actually have it so it doesn't show the BOM here as well. What I'll do though is it's a little easier to see everything in the actual Manage environment. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to that. So you can use, as you saw there, I can right click and jump into the record directly from it, or I can open up the client interface and get over to that. So in this case, I happen to know where my project is. It's located in there. This is the Manage environment. If none of you have ever seen this before, you can obviously see the folders here. So I have my Manage vault. This is my PDM vault that's linked to Manage, and I can browse to that project of where that is. And here's my my drawing. You know, again, very similar. Top half is your File Explorer. Bottom half is properties for whatever you have selected up top, kind of like PDM. And I can click on the assembly or the drawing. Either way, in this case, they're both going to have a BOM in there and get that same stuff, same record in there. So if I double click to open this up, this is actually opening the entire record up here. And I still have that BOM tab. And again, this is really, I kind of consider this the computed BOM. I probably wouldn't do a lot of stuff here. I can edit and do some of those things, as you can see here, but essentially, when it comes to a PLM, the BOM is almost its own entity. It's linked back and it's where used or attached to certain files, but it can be its own record, its own item. It can go through processes and reports and everything on its own. And that's where we kind of separate into PLM's type functionality from PDM and SOLIDWORKS. Usually what you're doing in PDM and SOLIDWORKS is just to get it ready for something like this or another application that you might use it for. So what I have here is in my documents and records, I've made a whole section. I've made an items or records BOM section here. And I've already got some in there, and each one of these is now a BOM. So if I wanted to kind of, let's say, you know, I want this BOM to sort of live on its own, I'm going to put the assembly in, but this is where I'm going to build the BOM, approve it, review it, you know, even revision it, all that kind of stuff. So I can just start a brand new BOM in here. And I already, basically, I could probably spend 2 hours on what you do with BOMs and Manage, and maybe even more. But just to give you some ideas, I have some default, what we call sort of groups or field groups here. I'm just going to select the default, but they, you know, again, it's going to change what the columns and things like that might be shown in there. Also, these properties. So unlike the properties, these are just the properties of this BOM record, not of maybe all the parts or the assembly or anything like that. This is kind of, whatever I want it to be. So in this case, I'll just say BOM webinar for the description. I do have the description required. That's what this asterisk, so it won't let me even go past this and save this unless I add in that. And then I can go to the BOM section here and start building it. So this is a new BOM record. I didn't build it from something. So, I can automate that, but I can edit it. Again, I have this out and everything, and I'm in as, somebody who has permissions. All this would obviously be permissions granted, very similar to how PDM operates. I'll go ahead and add that assembly. I happen to know where it is, but there is, search capabilities and things. If I needed to search by it, I can filter and do all that kind of stuff. But for simplicity's sake, I'll just go ahead and add that. Let's add the assembly. Now I can click add and close, or just add if I knew I was going to be adding a lot more. So you can basically, combine things or combine BOMs. You don't have to have all those things in there. This is where you can put it all together. So in this case, I'm just going to add and close that. And you can see I've got that line item in here, and I can expand that in a second once I save, but let's also add some other stuff. So let's say in this case, there's different ways to add. You can see here, and I can even copy from. We can take a look at that in a second. But I've also got like a library section here that just has common files or common things. This might be packaging, or as you saw in Jake's example, grease, or tubes of grease, or other types of adhesive or something like that I don't really model, but I want to make sure is included in this parts list, or this BOM, or this shipping BOM, production BOM, whatever we might call it. I can add, a quantity. Let's say I need 2 tubes of grease in there or something like that. I can do that. I can add and close, or just add, again, just adds it. Then I can pick from something else, add and closes, adds it. And, once I'm happy with that, I can save this BOM. And, then I can go ahead and review it, and you can see, okay, it's got the entire assembly and all the parts, and then it's got that added part. I can also add just any line items and stuff. Sky's the limit on how you want to modify this and adjust it. If you like pictures, you can actually show the images in here. So, if I've got nice screenshots and stuff of some of these images, I can pop those in there. Again, all the columns and everything, that's all customizable. Just assume you can add whatever property that you track in your parts, or even just in PDM or in Manage in here as well. What's really cool is you'll notice I have some different variants too. So I can actually have views of this. So I can have a view that maybe shows all fields. Kind of see some fields in here that I'm not necessarily using in these particular ones, or I can just have basic views. But on top of the different views I can have for each one of these, I can also have different variants of it. So let's say I need a European Union one that uses a different power supply or power adapter or something like that. I can quickly say, okay, I want to edit this European Union BOM, EU BOM, and instead of starting over, I can copy from. This is really cool functionality here, is I can actually copy from this record, which we already know there's a BOM variant, or the US one, or I can actually copy from a completely different record. So if there is a similar project that I've done a lot of work setting up the BOM on, I can just copy that all over here and then just go ahead and edit, the differences between the two. So in this case, we'll just assume we're going to copy it from this record, and there's more options here, but just simply put, then I've already done that, and I can go through and, let's, I don't know, say that like the label sticker needs to be removed or replaced with a different item, because we need a different language on the sticker or something like that. So, that kind of stuff, you can totally have a different variant and redo it. And then, save that. Again, lots of different things you can do here. Let's see, for time's sake, you can do, there's some compare tools and stuff too. So if I wanted to do some like comparing of the BOMs, I can certainly go through and do that. I'll skip over that right now, but basically very similar functionality that you saw in PDM. And then, this is a record, so it has properties, it has things. I can do stuff with this record, right? So some of the things that you might do is you might send this to a process now. So inside of, let me just close this. Inside of Manage, I've got a process for BOM approvals. And just to give you a really quick idea, it's just a simple process where, the BOM's submitted, goes through a review stage, and it's either approved or rejected. Obviously, this could have a lot more stages. It can have actions and tasks at each stage that have to get assigned to people and have to be completed before it can go to the next step. That's the kind of stuff that SOLIDWORKS PDM really doesn't have. It doesn't have tasks and assigning things. So I can do that. And this is just a process on a BOM, but it could be a process on PDM records or other items. So that's just an idea. If I want to send that to a process, the easiest way I do it is certainly I can start a new process from there, but I can just take this BOM webinar one that I just did and send it to a process and put it to the BOM approval. And now that's being used in that process. I don't think I have any mandatory fields. I think I can just save that and submit it through that process and review and have the different gates and everything that go on in there. So save that, close that. Also, what you could do is you can do some reporting. So SOLIDWORKS Manage has a reporting functionality. So I could right click and run a report on this. In fact, the reporting can be part of an output of it. So when the approval process is done, it runs a report and spits out a PDF or something like that. But just to kind of run it manually right now for time's sake, different reports that I might have, I specify which record types can use this report. In this case, I'm just going to do a quick flat view BOM here, and you can see it kind of has the EU BOM, and I think I have the US BOM down below and stuff. And you can totally, again, customize how this report looks like, how many levels it shows, whatever. Does it show graphics, all this kind of stuff. But this was just a very simple one I wanted to throw together. And of course, it's important to mention that it could go out to a PDF or something like that. And like I said, you can actually audit that as part of the approval process for the BOM or whatever. I just like to, even though that's just a BOM or a list there, you could do that on a CAD file if you up. So I could run a report on this and have a different type of BOM. In this case, I have some different BOMs in here. Actually, that's a single part. You probably want to run it on an assembly. So that's just touching the tip of the iceberg of what we can do with manage and build materials management inside of it. But I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of insight of what the next level up is and what you might be doing with your PDM BOMs in another third-party product. You can now do a lot of that inside of Manage and have it all linked and everything. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you.